Billy Joe Shaver's life reads like an American epic, a story of hardship, rebellion, heartbreak, and redemption, all wrapped in the twang of a guitar and the poetry of a man who refused to die quietly. Born in Corsicana, Texas, in 1939, Billy Joe came into a world that offered him little more than grit and survival. His father abandoned the family when he was still a boy, leaving his mother, Victory, to raise him and his sister alone. She worked long nights in honky-tonks, scrubbing tables and serving drinks to men twice her size, while her young son sat quietly in the corner, soaking in the chaos. It was there, amid the cigarette smoke and sorrowful songs, that Billy Joe's education began. Not from books or teachers, but from life itself. He watched as cowhands and drifters poured their pain into country songs, learning early that music wasn't just entertainment. It was a lifeline. School never suited him. He was restless, untamed, always drawn to the sound of a jukebox rather than a teacher's voice. By his early teens, he had drifted away from classrooms altogether, trading desks for dirt roads and cotton fields. He took whatever work he could find, picking crops, hauling lumber, sleeping under bridges, anything to make it through another day. But through it all, he carried a dream: to write songs that told the truth about the kind of life he lived. He didn't know how or when, but he was certain that his pain meant something. It had to. That dream nearly died before it could begin. Working at a sawmill to survive, Billy Joe lost 2 fingers in a devastating accident. The injury would have ended most musicians before they even started, but he refused to quit. He learned to play guitar all over again, adapting his style to fit what was left of his hand. What came out wasn't perfect, but it was real. A raw, uneven sound that mirrored the man himself. It became part of his identity, a reminder that every note he played came at a cost. The pain, the scars, the struggle. It was all right there in the music. In the 1960s, Billy Joe packed what little he owned and hitchhiked to Nashville. He arrived with no money, no connections, and no plan beyond knocking on doors until someone listened. The city wasn't kind to dreamers. He slept in cars, lived off scraps, and endured rejection after rejection from industry gatekeepers who thought he was too rough around the edges. But he never gave up. His songs were different, too honest, too raw for the polished sound of Nashville. And that difference finally caught the ear of one man who saw something extraordinary in him: Waylon Jennings. Waylon didn't just record a few of Billy Joe's songs, he built an entire album around them. Honky Tonk Heroes, released in 1973, would go on to define the outlaw country movement. It was the sound of rebellion, of men who refused to bow to Nashville's rules, and every word of it came from Billy Joe Shaver's pen. His songs told the truth about the working man, the sinner, the drifter, and the heartbroken, because he had been all of them. While others sang about heartache, Billy Joe lived it. His rise in music was never separated from his personal chaos. At the heart of that chaos was Brenda Joyce Tyndall, the love of his life, and his greatest heartbreak. They married 3 times, divorced 3 times, and never truly let each other go. Their love was turbulent, full of passion and pain, a cycle of devotion and destruction that defined both their lives. She was his muse, his anchor, and his undoing. When Brenda died of cancer in 1999, Billy Joe was shattered. He had buried the only woman who ever truly understood him, and the loss left a hole that nothing could fill. Every song after that was haunted by her ghost. Even through his heartbreak, Billy Joe carried the strength of his mother, Victory, the woman who had taught him resilience. She had endured everything life could throw at her: abandonment, poverty, and hardship. Yet she never lost faith in her son. When she died, not long before Brenda, Billy Joe felt another part of himself fade away. He had spent his entire life surviving, but for the first time, he began to wonder what survival was even worth without the people he loved. Then came the blow that nearly ended him. On December 31st, 2000, his only son, Eddie Shaver, his bandmate, his best friend, and his pride, died of a heroin overdose at just 38 years old. Eddie had been a prodigy, a gifted guitarist who played with the same fire that burned in his father. The two had toured the world together, their bond both musical and spiritual. Losing him was a wound Billy Joe would never recover from. He buried his son just months after burying his wife and mother. 3 graves. 3 of the people who had defined his entire existence, gone. The grief nearly killed him. And yet, somehow, he kept singing. He said God gave him the strength to keep going when he couldn't stand on his own. His shows became sermons of sorrow and survival, raw, unfiltered outpourings of pain and faith. When he sang, audiences could feel the weight of his losses, the ache in every lyric. His faith deepened as his body weakened. He began to speak openly about his relationship with Christ, saying it was the only thing that kept him from falling apart. His songs took on a new tone, not just about heartbreak or rebellion, but about redemption, forgiveness, and the fragile hope that there was something better waiting beyond the pain. But even faith couldn't keep trouble from finding him. In 2007, Billy Joe's name made headlines for reasons no one expected. After an argument outside a Texas bar, he shot a man in the face. Miraculously, the victim survived, and Billy Joe was charged with aggravated assault. The trial that followed was a media spectacle, a mix of Southern drama and outlaw folklore. The world watched as the aging honky-tonk poet stood accused of attempted murder. He claimed self-defense, and in true Billy Joe fashion, he never backed down. "Where do you want it?" he reportedly asked before pulling the trigger, a line that became part of his legend. In 2010, he was acquitted, and the outlaw image that had followed him all his life was cemented forever. The years took their toll. Billy Joe suffered a massive heart attack on stage in 2001, barely surviving a quadruple bypass. He battled strokes, lung issues, and a body worn down by years of cigarettes, whiskey, and heartbreak. Yet, he refused to stop performing. Even when he could barely stand, he would shuffle on stage, his voice shaky but filled with soul. Every performance was a confession. 1 part prayer, 1 part farewell. He knew his time was running out, but as long as his heart still beat, he would sing. In his final years, he found peace in simplicity. He performed smaller shows, often in Texas, surrounded by fans who saw him not as a legend, but as one of their own. His 2010 album Live at Billy Bob's Texas captured that essence, unpolished, imperfect, and utterly human. It wasn't about fame or money. It was about truth. He often said God had kept him alive for a reason, and maybe that reason was to remind people that even in a world full of lies, honesty still mattered. His music was proof of that, raw, brutal honesty, carved from a lifetime of loss and love. On October 28, 2020, Billy Joe Shaver's heart finally gave out. He died in Waco, Texas, at 81 years old. The news hit the country world hard. Willie Nelson called him the greatest songwriter of Texas. Bob Dylan, who had long admired him, once said Billy Joe's songs were truth set to music. His death marked not just the passing of a man, but the end of an era, the final breath of outlaw country's original soul. Billy Joe never sought fame, and he never softened himself to fit the world's expectations. He lived rough, loved hard, and told the truth, even when it hurt. His life was filled with tragedy, but from that pain, he created beauty that will outlast him by generations. Every scar, every heartbreak, every broken dream found its way into his songs. He was, as they called him, the honky-tonk Shakespeare, a man who could turn despair into poetry and suffering into song. In the end, Billy Joe Shaver's legacy isn't one of fame or fortune. It's one of survival, of a man who lost everything yet refused to stop singing. His story reminds us that sometimes the most beautiful art doesn't come from victory, but from pain, endured with faith, defiance, and a guitar that still plays, even when the fingers that hold it are broken.